Well, good morning, Manna Church. Jeff Christensen here once again, and welcome to part 4 of our need for endurance for Morning Manna. We've been talking this week about the troubles we face. If you haven't watched the first 3 parts, I encourage you to go back and do that. We've been saying that, we live in a troubled world. That's not a mystery to any of us. We have troubles in our own lives, and there are challenges to boldly living out our faith. The Bible calls us to endure, and Hebrews 10:36 specifically says to us, "For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised." As I said in part 1 and yesterday in part 3, verse 36 is part of a larger passage or pericope of Scripture, which also contains 3 fruits of endurance. So yesterday, we looked at one of those fruits, the fruit of joy, mentioned in verse 34, in which the author of Hebrews reminds his readers, and I encourage you to turn there and look at this with me. He says, "For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. For you had compassion on those in prison, you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property." So today we want to talk about this fruit of compassion. Compassion is actually the first fruit that's mentioned here in verse 34. When Jesus is our source of strength, we can endure, and when we endure his hardships through his strength, there is a joy that we can receive and walk in because he's at work in us, reorienting us as a people with a heavenly perspective. But having this joy and being reoriented toward a heavenly perspective not only affects our view of God and of our own circumstances, but it makes us others focused as well. See, when God is working in us and changing us, when he's refining us through hardship and making us more Christ-like through it, we can't help but be inclined toward others, toward having compassion for other people who need the love of Christ. Now, this verse in Hebrews speaks of compassion for those in prison. And in this context, the author of Hebrews is most likely referring to fellow believers who were in prison for their faith. So, this joy through trials should certainly bring out a compassion for fellow Christians facing hardship. But anyone who's experienced this process at work in their own lives can attest to the fact that compassion doesn't stop just with other Christians. When we're changed through trials like this, we can't help but have our eyes lifted up to see those who are hurting around us. This compassion empowers us to be vessels of kindness in the lives of other people. It drives us to be a people of action, bringing comfort and love to those who are in need and standing up on their behalf. See, endurance isn't just white-knuckling and holding on to simply get through the hardships and troubles. Endurance that's being spoken of here, endurance with Christ as our source of strength, it means being changed. This is so crucial to understand. It means we become a different kind of people, indelibly bearing his mark, his fingerprint, the evidence of his presence in our lives. It changes us. His compassion working in us, causing us to endure, changes us into a people of compassion. So it's good to be with you again today, Manna Church. I encourage you, come back tomorrow for part 5 of our need for endurance for Morning Manna. We'll see you then.